The hidden spiritual war. Behind the Iran war. What if the war you are watching on the news is not really about land, oil, or political power? What if behind every bomb, every negotiation, every moment of chaos in the Middle East, there is an invisible spiritual battle happening that most people will never see? What if the conflict we call the Iran war is actually a reflection of something much deeper? A war between forces of light and forces of darkness that has been going on since the beginning of humanity itself? Stay with me, because in the next few minutes, everything you thought you knew about war, conflict, and the future of humanity is about to shift. This is not just a political analysis. This is a spiritual awakening. Welcome, my friend, to Spiritist Light Journey, the channel where we explore the deepest truths of the spirit world and connect them to everything happening in our world today. I am so glad you are here. If this is your first time joining us, welcome home. And if you have been with us for a while, you already know that we do not just scratch the surface here. We go deep. We go where the answers actually live. Today we are talking about something that has been on the minds and hearts of millions of people: the spiritual war behind the Iran conflict. We are going to look at this not through the lens of politics or media, but through the lens of spirituality, of the teachings found in the extraordinary book Heaven and Hell by Allan Kardec, the foundational text of Spiritism. This video is part of our complete series on Heaven and Hell, where every single chapter of this transformative book is being explored right here on this channel. New episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at exactly 10 a.m. So if you have not subscribed yet, please do it right now, hit that bell icon, and activate all notifications so you never miss a single episode. And if you are enjoying this content, a like goes such a long way in helping more souls find this channel. Go ahead and hit like right now. It takes 2 seconds and it truly makes a difference. Now, let us dive in. I want you to take a breath with me for a moment. Just breathe in and breathe out, because what we are about to explore requires an open heart and an open mind. We are stepping into territory that is both ancient and incredibly relevant right now in 2024 and beyond. The hidden spiritual war behind the Iran war is real, and understanding it could change the way you see everything. First, let us talk about what we mean by a spiritual war. When most people hear the word war, they think of weapons, armies, casualties, geopolitical chess games. And yes, all of that is real. But Allan Kardec in Heaven and Hell teaches us something profound: that the physical world is a direct reflection of the spiritual world. Everything that happens here, every conflict, every act of violence, every political upheaval, has its roots in the invisible realms. The spirits who dwell in lower vibrational planes, what Kardec calls the imperfect spirits or the unhappy spirits, they do not just sit around waiting for the afterlife. They are active. They influence human thought. They whisper into the minds of people who are not spiritually protected. They fuel pride, hatred, revenge, and the desire for domination. And when enough human beings are vibrating at that low frequency, wars break out. This is not a metaphor. This is a spiritual truth backed by centuries of mediumistic communication, carefully documented by Kardec and confirmed by the testimonies of spirits themselves as recorded in his books. The Iran conflict, like every major conflict in human history, is playing out on 2 stages simultaneously. The physical stage we can all see, and the spiritual stage that most people are blind to. Now, I want you to think about something. When you look at the Middle East, when you look at Iran specifically, you are looking at one of the oldest civilizations on the planet. This is a land with deep karmic weight. Ancient Persia, which is modern-day Iran, was home to some of the most spiritually advanced beings in human history. It was the birthplace of Zoroastrianism, one of the world's oldest monotheistic religions, a tradition that explicitly teaches about the cosmic battle between light and darkness, between Ahura Mazda, the spirit of light and truth, and Angra Mainyu, the spirit of destruction and lies. The spiritual war happening in Iran today is not new. It is the continuation of a battle that has been going on for thousands of years, and it has deep roots in the soul of that nation and of the souls who have chosen to incarnate there in this lifetime. In Spiritism, we understand that groups of souls reincarnate together. Nations are not just random collections of people. They are groups of spirits with shared karma, shared lessons, and shared missions. The people of Iran, like the people of any nation caught in conflict, are souls who have chosen to be there at this time, to face these challenges, to grow, to suffer, to learn, and ultimately to contribute to the spiritual progress of humanity. This does not mean that the suffering is justified or that we should be indifferent. Quite the opposite. Understanding the spiritual dimension of a conflict actually deepens our compassion. When we see people suffering in a war zone, we are not just seeing political casualties. We are seeing our brothers and sisters in spirit, souls on a journey just like ours, facing trials that are part of their evolution. And this brings us to one of the most powerful teachings in heaven and hell. Kardec, drawing from the communications of elevated spirits, makes it clear: there are no accidents. There is no random suffering. Every trial, every tragedy, every moment of collective pain has a purpose within the grand design of divine providence. This does not mean God wants war. God is love. But God allows the consequences of human choices, the consequences of collective karma, the consequences of when a civilization has chosen, over many incarnations, to prioritize power over love, domination over service, pride over humility. The spiritual war behind the Iran conflict is, at its core, a war between those two forces. The force that wants to hold on to the old way of control and fear, and the force that is pulling humanity toward a new era of light, brotherhood, and spiritual freedom. Now here is where it gets really fascinating, and I want you to pay close attention, because this is the heart of what we are exploring today. In Heaven and Hell, Kardec presents extraordinary dialogues with spirits who have recently passed from the physical world, including spirits who died in wars, in acts of political violence, in moments of collective tragedy. And what these spirits reveal about what happens on the other side, about what they see from the spirit world looking back at conflicts like the one in Iran, is absolutely breathtaking. One of the most repeated themes in these spirit communications is this: the spirits who instigate wars, the powerful entities in the lower astral planes who whisper hatred into the ears of leaders and generals. They are working against the natural evolution of humanity. They are what Spiritism calls the spirits of darkness, not Satan or a single devil in the religious sense, but a vast army of imperfect spirits, beings who are still trapped in cycles of pride, vengeance, and the hunger for power, who use human beings as instruments. And they are especially active wherever there is political instability, religious extremism, wounded national identity, and generational trauma. Iran and the broader Middle East has all of these conditions. This is why the spiritual war there is so intense. But here is the message of hope that heaven and hell never lets you forget. For every spirit of darkness working against humanity, there are thousands of elevated spirits working in favor of it. The spirit world is not a place of equal forces where light and darkness are balanced in some cosmic stalemate. No. The teaching of Kardec, confirmed by the most elevated spirits who communicated through mediums, is that light is winning. Progress is inevitable. The evolution of humanity toward love, peace, and spiritual truth is guaranteed by the laws of the universe. It cannot be stopped. It can only be delayed by human choices, and that delay is what we are living through right now. Think about this with me for a moment. Why does it feel like the world is getting more chaotic right now? Why do we have conflicts escalating in multiple places simultaneously? Why does it feel like humanity is at a crossroads? Because we are. The Spiritist tradition teaches that humanity is in a transitional period, moving from a world of trials and atonement, which is what Earth has been for thousands of years, toward a world of regeneration. This transition is not peaceful. It is turbulent. When a chrysalis is breaking open so a butterfly can emerge, it looks violent and destructive from the outside. But it is actually the most beautiful transformation. That is what we are witnessing on the world stage right now. The Iran War, the spiritual war behind it, is part of this breaking open. Now let us talk specifically about what Heaven and Hell teaches about the role of suffering in spiritual evolution, because this is essential for understanding what the souls caught in this conflict are going through, and what we, from the outside, can actually do to help. Kardec teaches that suffering is one of the most powerful catalysts for spiritual growth. Not because suffering is good in itself, it is not. But because in moments of extreme trial, the soul is forced to make fundamental choices that reveal who it truly is and who it is becoming. A soul caught in a war zone, a soul who loses everything, a soul who faces the possibility of death every single day, is a soul being pushed to its absolute limits. And at those limits, transformation becomes possible in a way that comfortable lives simply cannot produce. This is not easy to hear. And I want to be really clear. None of this means we should accept war as inevitable or stop fighting for peace. Quite the opposite. The spiritual understanding of war actually increases our sense of responsibility. When we know that the souls in Iran, the souls in Gaza, the souls in every conflict zone are our brothers and sisters in spirit, our response cannot be indifference. It must be active, engaged, compassionate action. Prayer. Sending elevated thoughts and vibrations. Supporting organizations that help people on the ground. Speaking truth to power. These are not small things. In Spiritism, we understand that prayer and elevated thought are real forces that can literally influence the spirit world, and through the spirit world, influence physical reality. Let me tell you something that I find deeply moving in the communications recorded by Kardec. There are spirits who describe how, during times of great conflict on Earth, the spirit world mobilizes. Elevated spirits who have a connection to the affected region, through past lives, through spiritual missions, through karmic ties, they gather. They work tirelessly to inspire human beings toward peace, toward dialogue, toward compassion. They whisper into the dreams of leaders. They strengthen the hearts of people on the front lines who might otherwise give in to hatred. They work through doctors, through journalists, through ordinary mothers and fathers who simply refuse to let hatred win. Every single act of love in a war zone is spiritually amplified by this invisible army of light. And you, watching this video right now, wherever you are in the world, you are part of this. The fact that you are interested in the spiritual dimension of these events, the fact that you are seeking a deeper understanding rather than just consuming outrage and fear from the news cycle, that itself is an act of spiritual alignment. You are choosing light. You are choosing wisdom. And in doing so, you are contributing to the collective vibration of humanity in a way that is more powerful than you might imagine. This is also why I am so passionate about this series on Heaven and Hell. Because Allan Kardec did not write this book just as an intellectual exercise. He wrote it as a guide for living, for understanding what is really happening in this world and in the next. Every chapter of this book is relevant to what we are facing today. The spiritual war behind the Iran conflict is not separate from your personal spiritual journey. It is connected to it. We are all threads in the same cosmic tapestry. So let us keep pulling on this thread, because we have only just begun to scratch the surface of what is really happening on the spiritual level with this conflict. And I promise you, what is coming next in this video is going to shift your perspective in a way that you will not easily forget. Stay with me. Let us now go deeper into one of the most profound and sometimes misunderstood aspects of the spiritual war behind the Iran conflict. And that is the question of karma. Not karma in the pop culture sense of what goes around comes around, although that is a part of it. I mean karma in the deep spiritist sense, as taught through Heaven and Hell. The accumulated moral debt and credit of individual souls and collective groups of souls across multiple incarnations. Allan Kardec, through the communications of elevated spirits, teaches that nations, like individuals, carry karma, the collective actions of a people across generations, the choices made by leaders in the name of a nation, the values that a civilization has embodied or betrayed. All of these create a spiritual account that must eventually be balanced. Iran, as a nation, carries extraordinary karmic complexity. It is a civilization that has, at various points in its history, been a beacon of art, science, philosophy, and spiritual wisdom. Rumi, one of the greatest spiritual poets who ever lived, was Persian. The Zoroastrian tradition of ancient Persia gave the world some of its most beautiful teachings about light, truth, and the cosmic struggle between good and evil. But this same civilization has also been the site of tremendous suffering, conquest, and in more recent history, a revolutionary government that has combined religion with political power in ways that have produced immense human rights violations and regional instability. From a spiritist perspective, what is happening today is partly the playing out of this accumulated karma. The souls who are incarnated in Iran right now, both those in power and those suffering under that power, are there to settle accounts, to learn lessons, to burn away karma through the fires of trial. And the conflict with other nations, including the involvement of Western powers, Israel, and regional forces, is not random. These are groups of souls with deep karmic ties to one another, playing out ancient dramas on a modern stage. Now, I want to address something that might feel uncomfortable but is absolutely necessary for spiritual clarity. When we talk about karma and spiritual war, we must be very careful not to slip into the trap of justifying atrocities or blaming victims for their suffering. The Spiritist teaching on karma is never about judgment. It is about understanding. A child who dies in a bombing is not being punished for past life karma in some crude transactional way. The Spiritist understanding is far more nuanced, far more compassionate than that. What heaven and hell teaches us is that the spirit, before incarnating, in a state of spiritual clarity in the between-life state, chooses the conditions of its incarnation. It chooses the challenges, the family, the nation, the historical moment. Not because it wants to suffer, but because the soul, in its wisdom, knows that this particular set of trials will accelerate its evolution in ways that easier circumstances simply cannot. This is one of the most revolutionary and beautiful teachings in all of Spiritism. You chose to be here. The soul reading these words or watching this video chose this moment in history. And the souls caught in the Iran conflict, as heartbreaking as their physical circumstances are, chose that path at the soul level for reasons of profound spiritual significance. This does not make the physical suffering less real or less worthy of our compassion and action. But it does free us from the paralyzing helplessness that comes from seeing the world as pure chaos. There is a design. There is intelligence. There is love, even in the midst of what looks like absolute darkness. Let us talk now about the specific spiritual dynamics at play in the Iran war from the perspective of the forces operating in the lower astral planes. Because this is where the hidden spiritual war becomes most tangible and most relevant to our daily lives. Heaven and Hell describes in extraordinary detail the conditions of spirits who have died in states of hatred, fanaticism, and the burning desire for domination. These spirits, because they still carry the same passions and drives they had in physical life, do not simply drift into peaceful rest. They remain intensely active. They seek out human beings who are vibrating at similar frequencies, and they influence them. When we look at the leadership of the Iranian regime, or for that matter the leadership of any nation that chooses war over diplomacy, that chooses religious extremism over spiritual openness, that chooses the control of its people over their liberation, we are looking at human beings who are, to varying degrees, under the influence of these lower astral forces. This is not an excuse for their choices. They are still responsible. Free will is sacred in Spiritism, but it does explain why the patterns of cruelty and rigidity seem to be so persistent. so impervious to reason and compassion. When a human being is heavily influenced by spirits of pride and domination, reasoning with them is extraordinarily difficult. The influence runs deeper than the conscious mind. And this is why the spiritual warriors, both those in physical bodies and those in the spirit world, understand that the most powerful intervention is not always the political or military one. It is the spiritual one. Prayer, collective intention, the sending of elevated vibrations to those in darkness, whether they are soldiers, leaders, or ordinary citizens trapped in a web of fear and hatred. This is real work. This is the work that Allan Kardec and the elevated spirits who communicated through him were pointing us toward. Not passive resignation, but active spiritual engagement with the invisible forces that are shaping our world. Here is something I find incredibly relevant for this moment in history. The elevated spirits who communicated with Kardec and with subsequent generations of mediums in the Spiritist tradition have consistently said that the key to breaking cycles of war and collective karma is not military victory. It is moral and spiritual elevation. When enough human beings in any given nation or region elevate their consciousness to the point where they choose love over hatred, truth over propaganda, justice over tribalism, the karmic account begins to shift. The spiritual war begins to tip decisively toward the light. And this is happening right now in Iran, quietly, courageously, and almost invisibly to the outside world. There are millions of Iranians, especially among the younger generation, who are spiritually awakening, who are rejecting the ideology of death and control that their government represents, who are risking their lives to stand for dignity, freedom, and love. The protests, the underground art movements, the secret spiritual gatherings, the women who risk imprisonment to walk without the veil as an act of spiritual sovereignty, these are not just political acts. They are spiritual acts of the highest order. They are souls choosing light in the midst of one of the most oppressive spiritual environments on the planet. And the spirit world is watching, celebrating, and supporting every single one of them. Now, I want to bring this conversation even closer to home, because the spiritual war behind the Iran conflict is not something happening far away that does not touch you. It is happening in the same invisible spiritual field that you live in every single day. And understanding this is going to change how you approach your own spiritual life and your own role in the great transformation that humanity is going through. In Heaven and Hell, Allan Kardec explores what happens to soldiers who die in war. This is one of the most extraordinary sections of the book, and it is directly relevant to what is happening in Iran and across the Middle East right now. Spirits who died in combat, especially those who died with hearts full of hatred, with a burning desire for revenge, with the blood of others on their hands, and no remorse, these spirits often find themselves in a state of profound confusion and pain in the immediate afterlife. They do not immediately see the light. They do not immediately understand what has happened to them. Some of them continue to fight a war that is over, because their consciousness is still locked in that frequency of violence and fear. This is not punishment in the theological sense. It is simply the natural consequence of the state of the soul at the moment of death. A soul that has spent years or decades in the vibration of violence and hatred does not automatically shift to love and peace just because the physical body dies. The astral body, which carries the soul, is imprinted with all of those vibrations. And so the transition, for many soldiers and victims of war, is a slow and painful process of coming to understand what happened, of feeling the suffering they caused to others, of beginning the long journey back toward the light. But here is what is beautiful, and this is so important. Heaven and Hell also shows us the other side of this. Spirits who died in war with hearts open, with a sense of love for their fellow human beings, even if they were caught in a situation of violence, these spirits often have peaceful and even luminous transitions. The mediumistic communications recorded by Kardec include soldiers who died in battle and immediately found themselves surrounded by elevated spirits, by loved ones who had passed before them, by the light of understanding and love. And the difference between these two very different experiences of death in a war zone was not the physical circumstances of the death. It was the inner spiritual state of the soul. This tells us something extraordinary about the real stakes of the spiritual war behind the Iran conflict. Every soul who dies in that war, on every side, is entering the spirit world in a state that reflects their inner spiritual life. And every single one of those souls, no matter how dark their journey on earth, will eventually, in the fullness of time, find their way back to the light. Because the light is their origin. It is the origin of all souls. The most hardened soldier, the most fanatical ideologue, the most cruel leader, even they are spirits who were created in love and who will eventually return to love. The journey is just longer and more painful for some than for others. And this is where the teaching of heaven and hell becomes not just intellectually fascinating, but deeply personally liberating. Because it means that we do not have to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. We do not have to solve the Iran war by ourselves. We do not have to fix humanity's karma by sheer willpower. What we are asked to do is something far more achievable and far more profound. To work on ourselves, to elevate our own vibration, to become clearer channels of love and truth in our own spheres of influence. Because in the spirit world, as above so below, every act of genuine love, every choice of light over darkness, every moment of forgiveness instead of revenge, creates ripples that extend far beyond what we can see. Let me tell you about one of the most moving passages in Heaven and Hell, one that I keep coming back to when I think about conflicts like the Iran War. A spirit who had been a soldier in a devastating war, who had caused tremendous suffering in his physical life, communicated through a medium some years after his death. And he described what it felt like to finally understand the full weight of what he had done. He said, and I am paraphrasing from the essence of Kardec's recording, "I did not know. I thought I was serving a great cause. I thought the enemy was less than human. I thought my God approved of what I was doing. And then I died. And I found myself able to feel every moment of pain I had caused, every widow, every orphan, every burned village. I felt it all as if it were happening to me. And I understood then that there is only one race, one family, one humanity, that the enemy I killed was my brother. And I wept with a grief that had no end in the physical world. This is the spiritual reckoning that awaits every soul that chooses war, that chooses hatred, that chooses to dehumanize the other. Not as punishment from a vengeful God, but as the natural awakening of the soul's moral sense once it is freed from the distortions of physical existence and the influence of dark spirits. And this reckoning, this purification, is actually part of the soul's healing, because you cannot go forward spiritually until you have truly felt and understood the impact of your actions on others. That is the divine justice described in Heaven and Hell, not punishment, but understanding, not vengeance, but evolution. Now, what does all of this mean for how we engage with the news, with the conflict, with the fear and the anger and the helplessness that so many people feel when they watch what is happening in Iran and across the Middle East? First, it means we watch with spiritual eyes. We do not just see victims and villains, heroes and monsters. We see souls on a journey, all of them our brothers and sisters, all of them carrying karma, making choices, learning lessons in the most difficult classroom imaginable. This does not mean we lose our moral clarity. We absolutely should call out injustice. We absolutely should stand for the dignity and freedom of every human being. But we do it from a place of spiritual understanding rather than reactive fear and hatred. Second, it means we pray. Real prayer. Not the prayer of begging a distant God to fix things, but the prayer of aligning our consciousness with divine love and sending that love, that light, that elevated vibration into the spiritual field that connects us all. Spiritism teaches that prayer is a real force. When thousands, millions of spiritually aligned human beings send prayers and elevated thoughts toward a region of darkness and conflict, those prayers reach the spirit world. They reach the elevated spirits who are working to bring peace. They reach the human beings in that region who are, in their quiet moments, yearning for something different, something better, something light. And third, it means we look at what the Iran war is revealing about the global spiritual war. Because the conflict in Iran is not isolated. It is one front in a much larger invisible battle that is taking place everywhere on Earth right now. The spiritual war between the forces that want to keep humanity divided, afraid, and controlled, and the forces that are pulling humanity toward unity, love, and liberation. This is playing out in politics, in religion, in culture, in social media, in the intimate spaces of families and friendships. Everywhere you see division and hatred being manufactured and amplified, you are seeing the work of the lower astral forces and the human beings who, consciously or unconsciously, serve them. But everywhere you see people choosing compassion over judgment, truth over comfortable lies, solidarity over tribalism, you are seeing the work of the elevated spirits and the human beings who have aligned themselves with the light. This is the hidden spiritual war, and it is happening in your heart, in your home, in your community, right now. Every day you wake up and choose how to engage with the world. Every post you share, every conversation you have, every moment you choose whether to respond to conflict with more conflict or to respond with love and understanding. You are participating in this war. You are choosing a side. And here is the extraordinary thing that heaven and hell reveals about where this war is heading. The outcome is not in doubt. Let me say that again because it is so important. The outcome is not in doubt. The elevated spirits who communicated with Kardec across hundreds and thousands of separate mediumistic communications were unanimous on this point. Earth is moving toward a higher spiritual plane. Humanity is evolving. The reign of pride, hatred, and domination is coming to an end. Not in a single dramatic, apocalyptic moment, but through the gradual, unstoppable elevation of human consciousness. The spiritual war we are witnessing is actually the final convulsions of the old world as the new one comes into being. Allan Kardec, in Heaven and Hell, quotes an elevated spirit who said something that I find one of the most beautiful and hopeful things I have ever read on the subject of human suffering and spiritual evolution. The spirit said, in essence, "Do not be discouraged by the darkness you see around you. Darkness is loudest just before the dawn. Every soul that awakens to love, every heart that refuses to carry hatred, every act of genuine kindness in a world that seems to reward cruelty, these are the seeds of the new world. And nothing, absolutely nothing, can prevent those seeds from growing. The Iran war, the spiritual war behind it, the suffering of millions of souls caught in that storm, it is real, and it is devastating on the physical level. And it is also, from the perspective of eternity, a chapter in the greatest story ever told. The story of humanity's slow and painful but ultimately triumphant journey from darkness into light. Every soul that has ever suffered in a war zone, every soul that has ever chosen love in the midst of hatred, every soul that has ever sacrificed their comfort or their safety to stand for something greater than themselves, all of these souls are heroes in this cosmic story. And their courage, their love, their sacrifice is not lost. It is woven into the spiritual fabric of the universe, and it is bearing fruit that we may not see for generations, but that is absolutely real and absolutely transformative. So what do we take away from all of this? What is the practical spiritual guidance for living in a time of global conflict and spiritual war? Heaven and Hell and the broader Spiritist tradition gives us a clear answer. Work on yourself, elevate your vibration, choose love, truth, and compassion in every interaction, no matter how small it seems. Pray with genuine love and intention for those who are suffering. including those on all sides of the conflict. Refuse to be a vehicle for division and hatred, no matter how righteous the cause seems, because division and hatred, no matter how well dressed they are in political or religious language, always serve the forces of darkness. And stand firmly in the conviction that the light is winning, that humanity is evolving, that every soul, no matter how lost in darkness right now, will eventually find its way home. This is the message of heaven and hell. This is the message of Spiritism. And this is the message that I believe the world needs more than ever right now. Not despair, not indifference, but informed, compassionate, spiritually grounded hope. The hope that knows the darkness, faces it squarely, and chooses to be a light anyway. We have covered so much ground today, my friend, and I am so grateful that you stayed with me for this entire journey. We talked about the spiritual mechanics of war as understood through Spiritism and heaven and hell. We explored the karmic dimensions of the Iran conflict and the souls who have chosen to incarnate into that challenge. We looked at what happens to soldiers and victims of war in the spirit world and what the teachings of Kardec reveal about the hidden forces driving human conflict. We talked about the inevitable triumph of light over darkness and your personal role in the great spiritual transformation of humanity. This video is part of our complete series on the book Heaven and Hell by Allan Kardec, one of the most important spiritual texts ever written. New episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at exactly 10 a.m. If you are not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Click subscribe right now and ring that bell so YouTube lets you know the moment a new episode drops. We would absolutely love to see you every episode. And if this video moved something in you, if it gave you a new way of seeing this conflict and your place in the spiritual story of humanity, please share it. Share it with a friend who is feeling hopeless about the state of the world. Share it with a family member who is struggling to find meaning in the chaos. Share it with anyone who is searching for a deeper answer to why things are the way they are. Because that is what this channel is for, to be a light for every soul that is searching. Drop a comment below and tell me, what is the biggest shift in perspective that this video gave you? How are you going to engage with the spiritual war in your own daily life? I read every single comment, and I would love to hear from you. Your voice matters here. This is a community of souls walking this path together, and every comment, every share, every subscription helps this light reach further into the world. And while you are here, head over to our Heaven and Hell playlist to watch the entire series from the beginning. Each episode builds on the last, and together they form a complete and deeply transformative journey through one of the most important spiritual books ever written. The link is right there in the description and pinned in the comments. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here, for being a seeker, for choosing to go deeper when the world is screaming at you to stay on the surface. You are the light the world needs, and I will see you in the next episode. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 10 a.m. I will be here. I hope you will too. Until then, walk in the light, love with all you have, and never forget, you are never alone on this journey.